I'm RJ Nestor, productivity coach and Tana ambassador, and I'm going to show you in this video how live searches work in Tana. So live searches are what Tana calls queries. You can query information by the supertag that's associated with a node. You can query by a field that is in some way related to a node, like it's attached to a node. You can query even by just plain text. You can go in those. If you have a lot of those, that might be a little bit slower, but I've certainly made great use out of using just plain text as well. Most of the live searches that you encounter will be some combination of super tags and fields. For instance, and I'll show some examples here in a minute, but just to kind of talk you through that, if you're looking for all books written by a certain author, that query would want to search for nodes that are of the supertag book. So they're nodes that are type book. And then it would also want to include where the author is and has the name of the author. So you'd need the supertag book and you need the field author plus a particular value of that field author. Certainly there are other types of searches and more complex ones, but the most fundamental that you'll encounter will involve fairly simple parameters related around books. Not books, but super tags and fields. I mean, maybe you'll just look for books, but you'll probably want to look for more than books. So there are a couple of different ways to create a live search. First of all, you can use Tana's built-in command find nodes and follow the breadcrumbs, if you will, of that series of commands. So if I hit Command K, or if I'm on Windows Control K, the first thing that pops up is find nodes. I can go looking for it, or I can just hit the arrow down and then hit enter. And you see there's a lot of options that have a tag, or with any tag, or with a particular field, or with particular text. And as you go through these, you see those little right arrows at the other side of the of this dialog that you've opened. That tells you there's more to come. So if I say with tag and I hit enter on that, book is an option. So I'll choose book, since apparently, according to me, it's the only super tag you're allowed to use. And then this says book as list or book with field. Right now, let's just say all nodes that have the tag book, and we want to return them as a list of nodes. So I'm going to hit that, and now you can see the query is done, and we have some books that I had listed previously when we in the last video that I did. So all of those are here. If you were to open up the live query, this little button here lets you see the actual search expression. And you can see the only thing that's happening here is just looking for the supertag book. That's the whole shebang. Okay, so this is everything, and you saw me click done there. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. For the sake of using these later, let's go ahead and fill in our authors. And notice how we go from this empty kind of white area between the dashed line and the bullet to a darkened area when I add that there actually is information underneath here. So we'll say that Gulliver's Travels is Jonathan Swift, and now we have these three nodes, and they're all tagged book. So let's say, though, that I didn't want to go through the command sequence. I actually just wanted to use another way of creating a search expression. You can just type a question mark, and you'll notice it says create search node as soon as I type that question mark. If I type other stuff and then a question mark, I'm not going to get that. If I type a question mark and then other stuff, it's going to go away. But with a lone question mark, I'll get create search node, and I can click on that, or I can do what I just did and use the right arrow to navigate onto it and then hit enter. And it's going to give me this unnamed search node where I can search for whatever that I want here. Let's go ahead and make the same search as before, so you can see how that works manually. As soon as I type the hashtag book, because this is a small demo workspace, is the first thing that comes up. But you can type it, of course, as well, and then choose it. And having done that, you saw this search expression above. I'm going to click done for right now. Again, talk about the difference of these in a moment. But you can see I've now created the same search. By calling this, by doing the find nodes, the automatic title that I get is list of nodes tagged book. By doing it with the question mark, the automatic title is that I haven't named the search node at all. Both those are completely changeable. They're just nodes. I can type whatever I want here. If I were so inclined, I can type that. Okay. My preferred way of doing this is by typing the name of the node first and then converting it into a search node. That's not because it's any faster necessarily, but the way my thinking, the direction goes for me is that it's easier to think of what I'm going to call this search because it helps me crystallize exactly what I want the search to be. So let's just call this all books. And now I've done that. Now I use Command K, start typing the word search, and convert search node will come up. And now I have a node titled all books, which is a search for books. And when I do that, you'll see I get the same set each time. Now, I'm not going to, in this video, because I think it's the next layer of things, you'll see you have opportunities for filters and what you want to group things by. That won't really mean much in this particular query. So you can filter, if you wanted to filter by who the author is, you can just filter down to Jonathan Swift or whatever. So there are a lot of options that come along when you have these queries, but I'll keep it simple for right now. So all of these are the same query, just I got to them in a different way. So let's talk about those two buttons down there, the run once or done. So you click run once if you want to see the results of this query, but keep the search expression open for further editing. You use the done button if you want to close the search expression and create the live search. So the search will be live at that point. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's go ahead and add a couple more books here. I'll just add these down at the bottom for the sake of clarity here. Let's add the thin red line, and let's add the Great Gatsby. All right, so you can highlight multiple things and tag them all book that way, which is what I'll do. I added this one because it's another book by James Jones, so it'll give us a couple of James Jones to play with. And then we'll say F. Scott Fitzgerald is here. And I'm only doing that to give us a little bit more to play with in the queries. So run once keeps it open, done closes the search expression, and leaves the search live. Let's see how both of those work. Let me start here. I'll say all books, and then we'll add the search node. I did that with the Command K, which would be Control K on Windows. And I'm looking for all books. If I click run once, all the books that are in our workspace here will show up down below, but the option to keep this open will still be here. So if I click run once, here are all the books that we have in our workspace. If I were here, now I've just run it once, so I still have the search expression available up here. If I then change this to say author, and we'll say James Jones. So now I'm saying I look for all the books where the author is James Jones. You see over here on the left side it says and, so it's implying both a book and the author is James Jones. If I click run once now, everything that isn't by James Jones goes away, and that is here, and that's the way that works. Okay, so let me take this away, and if I click run once again, all of those will come back. And if I then were to click done, this search is going to stay live. So if I come down here and I say the Caine Mutiny is a book, and that book is by Herman Wouk. You saw right up there, as soon as I added the Caine Mutiny down here, it arrived in the query because this query is live. So because this query is live, each time you add a book, this is going to show up right up here inside this query as well. So run once leaves the search expression open. You can continue to edit. Done allows you to close it out. All right, so that's how that works. Now, this is where we get into some seriously interesting power. You can add new nodes directly to your searches. So they will be created on the current day node. So if you add something to a search, it isn't the original node is not created inside the search. The original node is created on whatever the current day node is. So on today's day node. But then because you put it in the search, it is going to be preset to the parameters required by the search, meaning it's going to have the appropriate tag on it with the appropriate field values and so forth, with some exception we'll talk about in just a moment. But this power makes it possible, for example, if I have a field inside a task super tag that is the project it belongs to, and then within the project super tag I have a search that is looking for all the tasks associated with that project, which has one other little layer to it, which is a little more advanced that I won't talk about in this video, but you have to know a little bit about how to look at a specific instance of a project. But the logic is essentially I have the task or the project field in the task, and I have a task search in the project. What that allows me to do when I go to the project, if I want to add a task, I can just add it straight into that search. And that task will be created and then automatically set up so it's assigned to that particular project. I don't have to do anything separate. It makes these queries particularly powerful. So let's say here, I'm going to create one more all books query. But we're going to say this one is by all books by Herman Wouk. Okay, so I'm going to go to search. Now I have all books by Herman Wouk. So that means I want the query to have book. And then I'm going to say where the author is Herman Wouk. So in a deeper layer of using field types and so forth, we wouldn't necessarily want to keep using plain text for our names of authors. We might want to actually have authors defined somewhere so that this field could be a little bit more powerful and make it less likely that, less prone to typos on our part or confused information. But for now, we're going to leave it like this, just for the sake of demo here. I'm going to click Done. So now that becomes a live search. And Herman Wouk wrote a number of other books. We'll say The Winds of War. And you saw I added that directly to this search. Let's open that up. You can see not only was it tagged book automatically, but the author Herman Wouk was assigned automatically. And so if I then said, oh, well, Aurora Dawn is by Herman Wouk and Marjorie Morningstar is by Herman Wouk. And then what do I have here? 3 more books, all by Herman Wouk, all assigned appropriately. This is some pretty powerful stuff that we're working with here, being able to add these directly to searches. When you have some structure built up into your system where you have inputs with super tags and fields and then outputs or views with searches, maybe arranged even in dashboards, talk about that later, but for the sake of now, just so you know that's possible, it creates a lot of power for you to be able to enter your input directly into what would otherwise be the output, because you get things aligned automatically. It's automatically set up correctly because you're adding it to this search. One other fundamental layer of searches, and that is how or and not work. So one thing to note about or and not, all that stuff I just said about adding things directly to searches, that's not going to work quite the same way when you have something that's defined with an or and a not. And if you think about it logically, that makes sense, because when it just says all books by Herman Wouk and that's it, it's easy to assign. These are, any book that arrives is going to be by Herman Wouk. But if you say all books by either Herman Wouk or James Jones, that's an or all books not by Herman Wouk, that isn't enough information for Tana or anyone to logically know what the setup of that node should be. So let's show how or and not work, and then I'll show you what I mean. It's not that you can't add nodes to queries. At that point you can, but you have to do a little manual configuration. It'll fix some of it, and you'll have to adjust other parts. So let's go ahead and create ourselves a query here. All books by Herman Wouk or James Jones. So that's what we're going to establish here. I'm going to convert that to a search node. And so we still want books, but now we're going to use or. And you can just click right here, and you click right here, you get or, and it's going to bring your cursor right to where you need to be to establish it. You can also treat or like it's a field and use the greater than symbol and type or and choose it. Either way, I actually do that because although clicking it is perfectly fast, leaving my fingers on the keyboard for me is a little bit faster. So either way works just fine though. And once you get over here, then you just add author the same way you would otherwise. So author Herman Wouk. Or, in order to stay inside the or area of the search, we need to stay at the same level. So author Herman Wouk or author James Jones. And so now we're going to get all of that 5 books or so that I put in here by Herman Wouk, as well as the 2 that are by James Jones. Here to Eternity, War and Remembrance, Thin Red Line, that's a James Jones. That's a James Jones. The rest, War and Remembrance, and then the last 4 are all Herman Wouk. Okay? So all of those are here right now. I could also want to see every book. And as you can see, I mentioned you can't add directly. When I did that, it knew that it could assign it book, but it doesn't know who the author is because it's an either or. But if I were to assign one of these 2 authors, automatically it's no longer a mismatch. You see how that worked? It's a mismatch because it doesn't have any way of knowing and it doesn't fit the query yet. But it knows that you probably want to add that information. So if you add that information and now it matches and it's okay. Okay, so we'll say The Hope by Herman Wouk has now been added to the list. I can also say that I want to view here all books that are not by Herman Wouk. We'll say that are in the system, because otherwise that's an extremely large list of books. Herman Wouk only wrote a few. There are a lot of other books. Search. So now I want to say book, and I want to use not. Once again, just like or, I can either click the not here, or I can use the query symbol and the greater than and do that. Not author Herman Wouk. If I do the run once, I'll keep this open up here. And you could say, this is everything that I have in here that's not by Herman Wouk. If I wanted to say instead, everything that's not by James Jones, or James, I guess, that'll bring up everything that's not by James Jones. If I want to say everything that's not by F. Scott Fitzgerald, I can run that once, and everything but The Great Gatsby will be there. And so that's how that works. And you can combine not and or. You could have a not at this level and an or at this level, and then a couple of authors out at this level if you want. But that's the fundamentals of how this works. Okay. If you were in my Tana Jumpstart, after we kind of talk through this stuff, we'd do some exercises. Let me just do one here as a sample. I know the video's gone on a little longer than I like them to be, but that's okay for right now because I think this is helpful. So if I wanted to say, all books by Douglas Adams, so we want to see this search Douglas Adams. All we have over here is book by author Douglas Adams. So I'll come over here. Okay, I want to search. I'm going to give it a title first, so I'm replicating it here, Douglas Adams. I want to use my convert to search node command. We know we want it to be a book. We know we want the author to be Douglas Adams. Now what's funny about this is I don't currently have any books by Douglas Adams in here. The search still functions, it just says there's nothing here. Remember, we can add directly to live query. So the moment I come down here and start typing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you can see it already knows it's a book and it already knows the author is Douglas Adams. So this is where things get just really, really interesting and really, really powerful in Tana. Create a query based on the following parameter, find all books written by Herman Wouk. I did that one already, so you don't need to see me do that. But this is where Tana's output becomes extremely valuable. You use those super tags and fields to structure your input. You can use searches, sometimes maybe combined into dashboards, and then all the various views and filters that we didn't talk about in this video, but you can experiment with a little if you like. You can use those searches to structure output. And now you have a really powerful tool at hand. I used books here as an example because it's a little bit easier and a little bit more accessible, but tasks and projects relate in various ways and show up in various searches for me that allow me to do all of my productivity and all my task management, project management just easily in Tana. It's very smooth and it's very simple. So I hope this is helpful to kind of structure your mind a little bit about how searches work in Tana, and hope that helps you get more value out of using Tana. If that was helpful and you'd like to learn more Tana basics and more next level Tana skills, consider joining my upcoming Tana Jumpstart. I do these every month or two, and I'd love to have you join the next one. We focus on fundamentals. We drill them. It isn't just me lecturing. Then we look at the next level skills, how some of those basics fit together and how they augment one another and how you can use those. Again, we'll drill that. We'll talk about common Tana challenges and some ways to overcome them, and then we'll look at your specific needs and how we can tune Tana to those needs. It is 7 hours in one weekend. It is a jump start. You invest that time in the weekend, 4 sessions, and we will then have you hit the ground running when you go back into your Tana workspace that Monday. So if you're interested in that, if that's something to be useful for you, the link is here. There's a little bit more information on the page where that link is. I'd love to have you join that next Tana jump start.